right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another edition of the Bulluminati podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Bond. Joined alongside me, as always, Seth Varnador and Robert Steeg. It's been a week. I think yesterday was a week since we announced the switch to Twitch hashtag switch to Switch. Twitch. I don't know what the hell am I saying, but it's been pretty successful. I sent out a message earlier this evening saying, "Hey, we're going to be a little late because Seth's super popular and he had another gig lined up." And it said, "Hey, send to 67 plus people in Discord," which was pretty awesome. But we're here. We're excited. I think it's been a pretty smashing success so far through the first week, if I do say so myself. But guys, how we feeling? A week into this thing? Do you feel rejuvenated? I feel after that, whatever that was in 2022, I feel rejuvenated going into this season.
Yeah, Steeg's on the Discord, breaking news, breaking hearts. It's great, and I got to see Steeg in person recently, so that was fun.
You did. That was fun. That was a good time. That was not because of the Discord, but just through sheer interactions of things. But yeah, it's nice to have an outlet of a circle of trust to be able to send out some of the information that me and Sean and a few other guys get. So, it's a nice little avenue for us to utilize so that we don't let things leak out, and when we know things leak out that we find, we know it's coming from that circle. So it's fun though. It's definitely been cool, and interacting with more people on a more what I could consider to be a more personal basis is fun as well. Watching the games live, discussing things live instead of just aimlessly throwing shit at the wall on Twitter and then forgetting about it after 45 minutes.
Yeah, so the interaction on Discord is so much easier than Twitter and so much quicker. I really enjoy it. So I've been surprised how much I've kind of been looking at it and how many people are in there conversating about different subjects and all kinds of. We got food in there. You got food picks in there now. There's a lot of interesting things happening in the Discord. And Steeg and Sean are breaking news in there and giving you the lowdown on what's coming down the pipe in recruiting. So a lot of good stuff in there. If you're not a member yet, join up. We're on the drive to 100 right now.
We really are. So all you guys have to do is follow us on Twitch, shoot us a DM and saying that you are doing so, and then we will send you the invite to the Discord, and that you guys will have free access to the Discord through the start of fall camp. And then through the first week, if any indications are abound, I think there'll be plenty of people who are going to be willing to pay for it, hopefully. And that's what we're going to be doing. And we'll be, I think you guys will see some of the fun things that we do on the Discord here. And I'm excited for the future of whatever this platform may be for us and the new avenue. But with the business, I guess part of the podcast out of the way, let's jump into it. Let's see where we want. Let's start with, we had some new football announcements. Guys who kind of already announced that they were going to be transferring in, and it seems like they have started classes and have enrolled and are officially part of the 2023 USF football roster. Steeg, take it away. Who do you want to start with first?
We'll start oldest to newest. I think is probably the easiest way to do it. Do it. When I say oldest, I mean this happened a little bit ago, but Bryce Archie is probably the first one that we can talk about that was announced. His story is kind of brief. Played a little bit at Coastal Carolina as a redshirt freshman. Left the Coastal Carolina program after a little bit as a quarterback, and was looking for a new home, and very quickly got swooped up by USF. So he's a guy that, for all intents and purposes, right now, where USF is at going into the spring, Bryce is actually a really critical piece. For those who may have forgotten and have pushed the 2022 season into the back of their mind, USF doesn't really have quarterbacks right now. you of course have Byron Brown, who's probably going to be fighting for that starting job, but Gary Bohannon still isn't healthy. Trey Marsh, his future's up in the air, and frankly, I'm pessimistic that he'd play football again, but apparently he's making incredible progress. But right now, and Gunnar Smith, who hasn't really played much over his years at USF. So those are your quarterbacks going into spring practice is Gunnar Smith and Byron Brown, a redshirt freshman and a redshirt freshman. So getting another guy on board is at least nice to get a little bit of play install on. Once we'll see the future of what Gary looks like and future Trey Marsh, we'll see what that position shapes out into. It's not really a position of worry for USF, but it is a position where you need to always take at least one guy. And that's the reason why, is because you don't want to end up with just one guy in the spring. So USF looks, pretty okay right there. Next, go on, Nate.
Yeah, I was just kind of touching on the quarterback kind of question marks there, and we'll get into it as we kind of get deeper into the depth chart. But I mean, there was a reason Ryan Bolduc was, I think he may have been listed as the backup the last couple of weeks of the season, or at least third string ahead of Gunnar Smith. It just seemed like he just never really progressed, or may have been in the doghouse. There was something strange was going on there for sure toward the end of the year. Fresh slate, new coaching staff, what have you. So we'll figure it out. And then also, I think probably since our last podcast, maybe we touched on it last time. I can't remember that Steeg's golden child of Jordan Smith also transferred out. So he's no longer an option. So the quarterback room, while there's 5 scholarship guys, if I'm not mistaken, 2 are hurt. So you're really down to 3. I personally wouldn't be surprised if they went out and looked for another scholarship quarterback, but that is just my thought process there, depending on how Gary progresses from his shoulder injury and whatever Trey Marsh's status is.
Right. And they have the room for them. So,
and just keep that in mind that you heard it here.
Noted. Ronald, thank you for saying this because I would have forgotten him. Bulls did sign a kicker because it's not listed on my list right now. Yes, they did sign a kicker, Brandon Farrell. He is from University of Virginia. Career 15 for 21 on field goals, 39 for 40 out of extra points. Solid kicker. I mean, they have kickers on their roster, but that's going to be a position that's going to be kind of up for grabs after Spencer Schrader transferred out. So you still have John Cannon there as well, and Will Fowler is still on the roster. So who knows? Open kicking competition, everyone's favorite, is going to be abound in the spring. And after that, speed round, Seth Jones, Baylor wide receiver transfer, RJ Perry, offensive tackle transfer from Tennessee, Derek Bowman, offensive tackle transfer from Houston, DJ Harris, a edge rusher from Texas, and then ring-a-ding-ding. If you were in the Discord, you knew about this. Naquan Wright, University of Florida running back. Their starting running back to start the season last year transferred to USF. He will essentially kind of be your, Brian Battie transferred out, Naquan Wright transferred in kind of situation. So again, if you were in the Discord, you kind of saw this coming for the past week and a half. But that was probably the exciting moment of signing day. This signing day that they had on Monday was, announcing Naquan Wright. And of course, they waited until the very, very end to announce it. They did also announce Dominic Ganella. I still can't get confirmation if he's on scholarship or not. I'm going to imagine that he is.
Just ask him.
Yeah, I could. Yeah.
That's what I did that with Trent Schneider his first year. I just I was interviewing him and I was like, "So are you on scholarship?" And he's like, "Oh yeah."
Yeah, I'll message him tonight. But yeah, so 7 guys on this or 7 transfers announced on this early signing transfer period thing. The reason why USF wanted to make sure to announce it this week and not wait on it is because today in 2 hours and 10 minutes, the transfer portal officially closes for the winter season for football. So they give about 2 days of processing for compliance. And so you might see like one or two guys enter the portal like after the fact, like tomorrow or Friday. But yeah, so the portal's basically going to be closed as of midnight tonight. So you wanted to get these guys in, get them announced, get them enrolled in classes, and ultimately start spring workouts and spring football install period. So that's where USF is at right now.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if we hear a story over at some point about the guy filing the paperwork late and doesn't get into the portal in time, and then he's stuck at the current school until May, and it just kind of throws everything off. And there's going to be a big hoopla somewhere about how this needs to be changed, so there needs to be some leeway, what have you. So just be ready for that, because that's always a fun story. The process stories about the timing and everything of people getting into and out of the transfer portal are always fun, and Lord willing, it just doesn't happen to USF.
Hope.
I think everybody. It seems like everybody was going to jump for maybe bigger opportunities has probably jumped at this point, and those guys are getting some bigger opportunities. It would seem.
It would seem. Xavier Weaver was out at Colorado this past weekend, along with some pretty big names. Maybe potentially teaming up with his former USF teammate and Jimmy Horn. Who knows? But I mean, let's dive into the depth chart, and I'll lead it in with this. Seth, are you able to pull that depth chart up from Sean?
Where was that?
It was in the Discord.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let me see.
Vamp. But yes, to kind of lead into it, we were having a conversation in Slack with some people today about the talent is not completely devoid at USF, and we were kind of going through it like, yeah, you lose an All-American with Brian Battie, but you bring in Naquan Wright, and then you have some other folks join. If you can get a Kelly Joyner back 100% and productive, that's an option. Jalen Johnson, the true freshman running back, a couple of Dominic Ganella, who has proved it at the FCS level for all intents and purposes, and a couple of other people. That room is not as bad as it seems, and especially with the quarterback room, again, depending on how Gary recovers, you have two pretty solid starting quarterback options there. The question marks always will be, what the F is the defense going to be like? Who knows? Defensive line is always going to be a question mark until they prove otherwise. Same with linebacker, and offensive line with how many people have left. I think four of the starting five guys are no longer with the program, either by graduation or transfer. So Meach graduated, Cecil graduated, Trey Jacobs graduated, and Dustin Hall transferred.
Yep.
And he ended up at Duke.
Yeah. Every single guy that transferred out, by the way, every single guy that transferred out of USF basically transferred up.
Yeah, I mean, technically you could even say Amari Dawson transferred up to JMU.
Yeah. Jackson Long went to fucking Georgia Tech.
I mean, goodness gracious. So can everybody see that? Give me a yay or nay. My eyes are pretty reliant.
No. I say yay. I say yay. That's all we need. There's a couple yays. All right. Yays in the chat. All right.
Yays in the chat, baby. Sweet. I think Nate's frozen. Or is he back? There he is.
All right.
He's back.
Am I back? See, if it's only happens once, I'm okay.
You're lagging a little bit. You're behind us by like half a second, I think, here. I think we might need the modem. Yeah, there it is, baby.
Damn. So close.
All right. Can you see it, Nathan?
Yes.
There you go.
That's all that matters.
All right. So this is Sean's 100% right. No notes, no issues. depth chart heading into spring. I probably would switch Byram and Gary, but that's just me. I'm not going to nitpick. I am going to nitpick. This does not. I don't think this has Naquan right. I think he jumps right to the top there. I think he's going to be the starter. But you guys, give me your initial thoughts of what we're looking at. If you feel good, bad, indifferent, position of need, where your biggest worry is as we head into spring practice. We're not going to even talk about fall camp. That is 7 months away. Spring ball is in like 2 months. Let's keep it focused on spring ball and who could be there to make an impact on a spring game that we may or may not be able to stream.
Hey, that's the hope. I think offensively, I think it's good and serviceable. There's a lot of unproven talent in that wide receiver room, though, but it is a talented wide receiver room. There isn't really any doubt about it. You know, you're looking at basically your 2 of your 3 starters, Yusuf Terry and Joe are previous Power 5 wide receivers, and Naeem Simmons is an all-conference wide receiver coming out of FCS. So they're not devoid of talent. I think when you start getting into, the one in particular, the slot receiver with Sean Atkins, that's where I think some fans are kind of going to get a little worried because, the former walk-on turned scholarship slot receiver that's, shorter than usual. That can kind of worry some fans, especially in Golish's new offense, where you kind of favor size a little bit more. I don't know if Sean Atkins completely fits into the offensive scheme. So I could imagine that they might go after one more wide receiver in this signing period. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. We may have dropped who we think it's going to be and who they're targeting in our Discord channel. So I think if they can get one more wide receiver to kind of fill in that slot, kind of like a true either starter or backup, or however you want to consider him, I think that wide receiver room feels a lot better for me, though.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a point of not necessarily concern, but curiosity, right? Seth Jones coming from a P5 program, not a ton of production, right? So, and then you got some young guys in there. But like you said, it's littered with P5 transfers. That receiver group probably looking to add one more guy, like you said, but that'll be a source of curiosity. Their receiver, I mean, at Tennessee and at different stops it's been really like trait. If you have a trait, like if you have the straight line speed trait, they can get you open. So I think they'll probably be able to make do with what they have. Obviously, if you had the exact same receiving group you had at the end of last year, you'd feel really good about it. But those top 2 guys are out. Tight end will be interesting. I think Weston Wolf will have a chance to climb the depth chart. He was at Maryland. He had a really good high school career at Venice, a really good high school program. He's a pretty good player, so that'll be interesting to see how that battle goes. Quarterback, I think you feel pretty good with the top end you got there, but injuries and things like that. Spring will be interesting to see in terms of repetitions, but I think you feel pretty happy with every group. Obviously, offensive line, you don't really know how much depth you have, because while a lot of guys got to play last year, they had a lot of guys leave. So the guys who got to play last year will be starting, so that's good. But if one of them gets hurt, maybe not as good. And you got a couple transfers in there to kind of help with that as well. So on the offensive side of the ball, I think you'll be all right. Defensively, you'd probably like to get a couple more guys in a couple positions. You'd probably like some more defensive linemen, particularly some bigger guys. But maybe that's something they don't feel like they need as much with switching to probably an odd front. You got a guy like Rashad Cheney at the nose. Maybe you don't need a ton of bodies there. Obviously, more depth, the better. And then linebacker, I think you've got some guys that you've got a lot of guys that have played, but how do you feel about them? I don't know. I think it's smart, and especially in the first year, to go out and get some guys in the portal, and then it's also smart to leave yourself some scholarships after you get to see what you actually have. and then go out and address those needs. You don't want to go fill up your class and then be like, you know what? I thought we were going to be pretty good at receiver, but we really need a couple more guys. Oh, wait, we don't have any scholarships left, right? So now there will probably be some movement from, I'm sure, like there will be for everybody. There'll be some movement of guys off the team as well in that portal period that'll open more up. But I think you've got a good base to kind of see, what you got in spring and then add to it in that next portal period. Give the coaches a chance to see what they have in person. And maybe they feel pretty good about some positions that would surprise some people. That's the other part that I think we have to remember about last year. There were so many injuries last year, and the staff had gotten to a point where they couldn't use it as an excuse because of how poor they'd been in previous years. Like, there's no excuse. This is your third year. It shouldn't be, it shouldn't be this. But there were a ton of injuries last year at key positions. A bunch of guys had to play. So maybe the depth isn't as bad as it felt at times because they actually just didn't have they were just so injured. You really were kind of at the bottom. So just adding a few guys here and there might, and having some health luck might shore up those depth issues. So that'll be kind of interesting to watch. Spring will be a lot of fun. Hopefully we get to watch some of it. Maybe we get to see a practice would be cool. A spring a game streamed would be cool, not just on Twitch. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that you kind of hit the nail on the head. And frankly, when I look at looking at the first string guys, I feel kind of good about it. I don't feel obviously great. I'm not, calling a, conference championship or anything like that, but knowing what I know about most of these starters that are projected here, I feel pretty all right about it. Obviously you slot in Naquan right there next to Mikey, or instead of Mikey Dukes, but that defensive line, Eddie Kelly, Rashad Cheney, and Jason Vaughn, those were our three best defensive linemen last year. And then you kind of knock in there with Lloyd Summerall, and to give kind of a little bit of background on things. So the Todd Orlando defense, it's an odd man front. It's a lot of multiple assignments and everything like that, but you essentially have these four hybrid-esque players. So your bandit is a defensive end outside linebacker. You can think of kind of like a pass rush specialist, an edge rusher. They kind of will line
Shaq
up on
Barrett for
a Shaq Barrett for you Bucks fans. Or
they can also probably
Yeah.
play in the boundary, and also like they can drop him in coverage, so he doesn't have to go far, but it'll sometimes drop in coverage to the boundary.
Right. I would honestly, not to diss Sean or anything like that. I think Eddie Kelly could also find himself in that bandit position if he is as athletic as advertised. He could drop into coverage if need be, but Lloyd Summerall should slot in perfectly there. Rover is going to be kind of your coverage linebacker. So a guy who does have experience, usually slotting and covering their, getting a chip on their slot receiver that might be a little faster, or the running back coming out of the backfield or anything like that. And Mac Harris is a perfect option for that because Mac Harris played safety. So he's pretty good at covering, and he's gained quite a bit of weight and poundage and strength over the years here at USF. So I think that's actually a perfect position for him. DJ Gordon, we saw him all last year flying around. Mac linebacker is your Mike linebacker. He's going to be the play caller and the heart and soul of the defense, and probably end up murdering someone over the middle at least once or twice a game. And then Field is for the old USF faithful is the Angry Bird, kind of your hybrid linebacker, defensive back kind of situation there. You really want this guy to be able to blitz the quarterback if need be, but can line up basically anywhere along the field if he needs to be a fifth safety, if he needs to, be in depth or anything like that. So aside from one glaring position here, which I don't like this particular person starting, but I'm not going to say it out loud, I think this is a pretty good starting. It's the two that I get a little worried about, and then the three where I start getting really worried about things, because that's a lot of freshmen. That's a lot of young guys. That's a lot of guys that just can't crack it, if they're more than a year old. So but you hope you don't get to that point. I hope we got to that point at Game 5 last year, so I hope I never see that over again.
The thing that kind of sticks out to me, even if you move Byram to the starting spot, outside of him, Gunner, and Donovan, all those guys are transfers. And that, I know I probably shouldn't feel this way, but golly, man, the cupboard's a little barren coming from high school prospects. Like, do you guys see anyone on that depth chart that, like, I think especially the offensive line, it just seems like they just could not develop an offensive lineman to save their life unless they were transferred in and already had some college experience.
I mean, that's the scary part about it is offensive line is one of the most difficult positions to recruit and develop and get right in college football, because there's a lot of variables and there's a lot of guys who in high school were just big guys playing up against people like me, so they get great film and they go to camps and everything like that, and they have the size and the measurables, and then they put the helmets on and they're lined up next to their guys, and all of a sudden they turn into a revolving door. And we've seen it over the years where a guy might be serviceable for certain instances, but can't pass block or can't run block or something like that. And it's just a big body that gets in the way for half a second before killing our quarterback. So that's the scare. You have a veteran there with Donovan Jennings who can kind of at least rally the troops a little bit and potentially be kind of the leader that this program needs. But yeah, I mean, that's terrifying to bring in 4 new guys, especially with the minimal amount of experience that some of those guys do have.
I think, I don't know if you can say it was lack of development. Like, think about how young the offensive line core they inherited, the last staff inherited when they came in. All those guys were sophomores, and then with COVID, you basically got a lot more years out of them than you wouldn't under normal circumstances. You're going to play those guys. They developed into pretty good players, and you had a pretty good offensive line group last year. So I think guys developed, but all of them left. So it's hard to tell how the guys behind them developed, if at all. But I think it's smart to come in and bring guys that are somewhat more proven in the first year. And then maybe if they get beat out by one of these guys that has developed, that's great. But if not, you've got some proven guys there that you can start off quickly with. What you don't want to have happen is all those guys that they put a lot of development, a lot of time into, graduate or transfer, and then you come in and are just like, all right, let's see what these guys got, and not really know. And if they end up being not great, then your season's already shot. If they end up being pretty good, that's great. And they might end up being pretty good, and one of these guys will break the starting lineup, and it'll look different than it does here on the paper or on the screen. But I think it's always good to give yourself some wiggle room there.
Yeah, and I will say they have 2 pieces on this offensive line in this recruiting class that I think will be your leaders in this program. Is James Jenkins and Nikola Milovic. But I mean, true freshmen. Starting off, probably won't. I hope won't play much, but those are 2 guys that I think when it comes down to the staff, those were the 2 kind of home run signings of the class to me. Were those 2? I mean, clinical and keeping 2 high end Bay Area offensive linemen in town it's going to pay its dividends down the road at least. So I just hope they don't have to play much their freshman year.
Yeah, and in terms of quarterback, they have one visiting this weekend. Blake is it Blake Boda from Cocoa?
Mm-hmm.
He's taking it official. Allegedly, he's getting set. Was it this? What you saw? You put something out on him, right, Steeg? That he's making his decision pretty quickly.
Yeah. So Blake Boda has been he's been committed to UNLV for the last couple of weeks, but UNLV's offensive coordinator just left to go to Texas A&M.
Yeah, Petrino was his primary recruiter at UNLV.
Right. And so he kind of reopened his recruiting, and he's going on a visit here, and then he's going on a visit to UNLV at the end of the month. And typically in recruiting world, last visit usually gets the commit. So it's something to monitor. But Blake Bode is I think crushed some records for the state passing records or something like that. And he's massively talented, but kind of came on late, and he's a left-handed quarterback, which some coaches don't like. So he's a guy to watch, but they definitely have interest in him. And so bringing him and his teammates from Cocoa, I think, is a pretty smart decision, since Cocoa's an all right football program.
Yeah, they won the state championship, I believe, this year. He threw for over 4,000 yards, 49 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, ran for 205 yards and 5 more touchdowns. They went 11-3, won the state championship. He's coming into town this weekend, and like Steve said, he's bringing a couple of teammates. They're going to have some 2024 kids from Cocoa in town as well. So it seems like outside of a few areas, a few guys they're still kind of recruiting in this class, they're really moving on to 24, which is good, because that's what happens a lot with kind of new coaching staffs. They get stuck in the class. They come in and they don't get a head start on that next class, and they're playing catch up for years, just trying to catch up to these programs that have already been able to move on. So it seems like they're doing that already, which is a good thing.
Right.
I think and the last Cocoa quarterback that may or may not have played at USF and definitely committed to USF, Bruce Judson. Blast from the
Bruce Judson ended up at Tusculum, I think, for a year. I just remember looking him up. He was all over.
It all comes full circle at this podcast.
I think he was at Independence for a minute there. I mean, holy cow! That'd be a fascinating story. That's a fascinating oral history right there. Because man, him and his 3 teammates committed. None of them ended up at USF. Bruce never even got into Oregon. What a cluster of a recruiting cycle.
Right. Yeah, he ended up at Tusculum, but it looks like he didn't play.
Shame.
So
but yeah, so the obviously the staff isn't done filling out the current class. They have additional visitors aside from Blake Bode and a few other guys from his class. They have Desario Riles, who is an edge. They classify him as an athlete, but he is a defensive end, tight end, quarterback. So athlete is what we're going to qualify that. He comes from University Christian. He's coming on a visit. He just visited East Carolina. He is visiting USF this week. He is shutting down his commitment and will be signing after this weekend. Signs are pointing pretty good for USF, but we will see how that visit goes.
Does he still have the Indiana visit scheduled after?
It said that he canceled it, but it's still on the website, so I don't know. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, so it'll be down to ECU, USF, or Indiana. We'll see what happens there. They had a few other visitors. So Marquise Montgomery, my aforementioned wide receiver from JUCO from Snow College, he was on a visit last week. They also flew out to go see him, so that shows USF's level of love towards him. And then Drew Perez, I saw Andrew kind of mention him. Drew Perez did visit USF. He is a 6'8" offensive tackle from South Lake or South Carroll and
South Lake Carroll.
South Lake Carroll, there it is, in Texas. He is continuing to get more offers from interesting programs, so he's one to monitor. Some people kind of jumped the gun on him. He's not going to commit until probably signing day, and USF at least got him on a visit. He got an offer from Tulsa today, which is really going to make things difficult for USF, but they're still high on him. They will probably take one more offensive lineman from at least high school before they round out that class. And then the rest of this class is, probably bringing in a linebacker, probably bringing in a defensive lineman, probably bringing in a quarterback and a wide receiver and offensive. They're going to take like one more from every position except for running back. And all of them are basically going to be like depth pieces. I don't think that USF is going to get a starter or any massive contributor that they don't think could play this year. They kind of looking more towards the future and some developmental guys. But as Seth mentioned, they are pointing their guns towards 2024, which is the smart thing to do. Get these guys in, come see the new IPF, come watch some practice maybe. Hey, we're doing install. you're going to learn this at the same time. Maybe butter up some kids and hey Blake Boda, what do you think about this play call or something along those lines? So we'll see how that goes.
I'll be really interested to see what kind of player they can get in this offense, especially if it takes off in year one. It's definitely a different offense than anybody kind of in the footprint here. So it'll be really interesting to see what kind of level of kid they can pull to play in it. If they do have a lot of success year one, it would be a lot of fun to play in if you're a quarterback or a receiver.
Right. And they've been very strategic on who they have been targeting for the 2024 class. If you've been following Sean and myself, you'll notice that's a lot of kids from what are considered to be good schools for football. There's a lot of programs with historical precedents that are producing pretty good athletes, and they're going to get them on campus as soon as they can to come showcase this offense and showcase how much fun it is. Because offensively for these wide receivers and running backs and quarterbacks, it's attractive to at the prospect of a school like a scheme like this. Offensive linemen might be a little bit more difficult because you got to say, hey, you might be running a lot more with not a lot of breaks, and then defensively, you have a lot of pretty good personnel to kind of gel with these guys. Kevin Patrick obviously is known for his defensive lineman. James Rowe is a USF alum through and through, so he's a good guy to have back there. Chad Kramer is pretty young and can relate to some of the kids, and Todd Orlando's a genius to some circles. So they should have no problem with recruiting, especially now with how the portal's been as loose as it is. There should be no problem with recruiting anymore for USF. It's open. It's theirs for the taking.
Yeah. Good question. I think Tulsa used to, but I don't think anybody else in the conference is running this. Tulsa kind of ran a version of it with Montgomery, but he's gone. So I don't think anybody else is kind of running this type of system. I would imagine it'll get more popular in the coming years. So you may see somebody, but nobody's running. I don't believe it's running kind of this Baylor style, old school style, wide spread, wide receivers and all that kind of stuff. Right. So it should be unique.
Should be fun, at the very least.
Yes, that's the hope, right?
Yeah. And they'll take a step back offensively. They'll make their mistakes and everything like that. It's year one for a new offense, but I'm excited to see how they kind of do this install during spring. Because for a lot of these kids, this might be a wake up call on conditioning and on strength and everything like that. They'll get their ass kicked sometimes. But I did like the new tagline that they have. It's not United start to finish. It's be who you say you are, which sounds like the Lion King.
Can you get James Earl Jones out here to do a little narration?
They did George. I don't know how to pronounce this. The new strength and conditioning coach. I think it's George Kurides. They showed that little clip of him today during their strength workout and everything like that. And I was like, damn, this dude's sexy. Like, holy shit. Oh my God. I was joking earlier that, if we're spry for content, I was going to rank our coaching staff and everything, but I'm including George in there because George quickly skyrocketed to the top of my sexy ranking here.
If we had done this last year, I think Travis Trickett would be up there, as well as Sawyer Jordan, who is now he's an offensive analyst for quarterbacks at Coastal. He followed Trickett to Coastal. I think he had now officially announced that today. And then Xavier Dye's up there as well. So, but for sure,
the USF Myrtle Beach campus.
Yeah, and there's always the premise, like if your quarterback's not attractive, then how much confidence can the guy really have? It's like if his partner's not really attractive, does he really believe in himself? And there's some credence to it. If you got a straight uggo for a spouse, what confidence are you saying that you have for yourself? If you're supposed to be a leader, there's some I mean, this is some absolute like caveman mentality for sure, but there's some credence to it. I'm not gonna lie to you.
It's true. The sexier the starting quarterback, the better. It's literally, I think, a proven scientific fact.
Honestly,
I've heard some say Sam Hartman's too good looking.
He could be.
It's just
No,
you
I
go
get it.
too far off one end, then it becomes distracting.
Exactly, Andrew. It's straight up the boardroom scene from Moneyball for sure, and it's absolutely true. He was like, he's got an ugly girlfriend. He doesn't have any confidence in himself. So why not? But we've gone off the rails so hard. It's almost 10:30. I think I'm ready for bed. Shorter episode tonight. We'll Steeg, what do you guys got planned for tomorrow?
Ooh, yes, tomorrow. So Vito and I will be live for the USF Roundup, discussing anything and everything related to the Olympic sports with USF Athletics. We got a very special show, second one, and we're already bringing on a guest. Look at that. Mr. Heath Rinkus is going to be joining us to talk about our back-to-back-to-back co-ed cheerleading national championship and the all-girl cheerleading championship as national championship as well. So we'll be discussing that in depth with him to kind of get more insight on what goes in on that, because for us, it's we kind of just see, a three-peat for USF cheerleading. Great. Thumbs up, guys. But, we want to go in depth and to highlight and show some love to that program that works really hard to cheer on an empty stadium. God bless them.
They're doing the Lord's work. I'm sure they were trying to cheer on a crowd that were down 20 plus points for most of the night tonight against Cincinnati. It's tough. I think there were some people during the national championship game just kind of really feeling terrible for the TCU cheerleaders.
It's a tough fucking job. Let me tell you something.
It's a tough gig when your team sucks. I was talking to one of my brother's really close friends from high school, cheered for the Bucks for 3 years, and they were horrific during her 3 seasons. And she said it was one of the worst experiences, like having to cheer in a half empty stadium when the Bucks are getting their absolute tails whipped with Josh Freeman popping Adderall and going to Soho at 4:00 in the morning before a game. Like, it was awful.
That sounds incredible. But we will also be talking about, obviously, the men's basketball, women's basketball, men's tennis, what happened there. And then we get to talk about something good with a running sport. Some good things happened in track and field over the weekend.
Sure,
well, technically the track portion of the running sport there, but there's some good things happening there. So it'll be on around 9:00 tomorrow. We'll probably go a little bit longer just because I do want to hear more from Heath on what's going on there with cheerleading. So it should be fun. I might get naked. Who knows?
Oh man, Lord willing. Is there a nudity clause in Twitch that we can't be nude? Are there rules?
I think there's rules.
And can be tasteful.
Tasteful nudity, perfect.
Tasteful. It will be tasteful nudity.
Oh, there you go.
I can't wait.
Baby.
Perfect. All right. Well, for Steeg and Seth, I have been Nathan Bond. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for staying up with us. Go enjoy the rest of your night. Get some sleep. Have a wonderful Thursday. Be sure to check out the USF Roundup tomorrow with Steeg and Vito with special guest Heath Rinkus as we discuss all things cheerleading and Olympic sports. Again, follow us on Twitch. Shoot us a DM and you'll get into the Discord free until fall camp. Go Bulls.
Go Bulls.
Go Bulls.